goals in terms of goals and assists in the Premier League. So the Premier League is one of the greatest. Always when you say is the greatest, not the greatest, it's no doubt is one of the greatest for sure.
When Kevin De Bruyne left Manchester City, there was real doubt, not manufactured noise, not social media panic, genuine football doubt, because players like that don't leave cleanly. They leave questions behind. People wondered if City could ever recreate that level of creativity again, if anyone could control games the way De Bruyne did, if that feeling, the one where City get near your box and everything suddenly feels inevitable, was just gone for good. And for a while it felt like it might be. City were still winning, the passing was still flowing, the system still worked, but the games felt different.
Really difficult to replace, really difficult for many reasons. Yeah, we know that.
Because De Bruyne was never just about assists. He shaped matches before they broke open. He moved defensive blocks without touching them. He decided when games should speed up and when they should breathe. That's why City never went shopping for the next De Bruyne. They knew that player doesn't exist. What they needed was a new way to solve the same problem. And almost without anyone noticing, something started to change. Rayan Cherki didn't arrive with hype. He arrived and just fit. In around 755 minutes across all competitions, he's already produced double-digit goal contributions. In the Premier League alone, 6 assists in 488 minutes. Not numbers that scream at you, but numbers that keep showing up right when matches begin to lean one way. A first touch between the lines, a defender pausing for half a second too long, a run being found earlier than expected. It doesn't look dramatic, but it keeps happening. This isn't a player finding his feet. It's someone quietly shifting the balance. Cherki isn't here to replace Kevin De Bruyne. He's here to bring back a feeling. That split second when City get the ball near your box and you already sense what's about to happen. And that's what the Premier League still isn't noticing about Rayan Cherki. Rayan Cherki arrived at Manchester City without noise, and that alone told you something. On 10th June 2025, City confirmed his signing on a 5-year contract. The reported fee was 36.5 million euros, with performance-based add-ons and a sell-on clause built in. By modern City standards, this was not a statement transfer. It was not a gamble either. It sat in that very Guardiola space between precision and patience. This was not a club replacing Kevin De Bruyne. This was a club adding a new lever. Just 12 days later, Cherki scored his first goal in City colors in a 6-0 FIFA Club World Cup group stage win against Al Ain. Not a Premier League stage, not a European night, but still a reminder of what City had bought. Calm touches, sharp execution, no need to force the moment. Then came the quiet signal that mattered far more. On 14th August, after Jack Grealish departed on loan to Everton, Pep Guardiola handed Cherki the number 10 shirt. No press conference declaration, no long explanation, just a number that carries weight at City, not because of history, but because of responsibility. 2 days later, on the 16th of August, Cherki made his Premier League debut away at Wolves. He came on as a substitute for Erling Haaland in a 4-0 opening day win. Again, no ceremony, and again he scored. That is how Guardiola introduced him, not as a savior, but as a solution who could step in without disturbing the structure. Because Cherki was never bought for headlines, he was bought for behavior. At 22, he fits the Guardiola profile perfectly. Young enough to absorb the system, technically fearless, comfortable receiving between lines, able to play wide, central, or in the half spaces without needing the ball to constantly orbit him. City did not see a future superstar first. They saw a player who could make others better sooner. Guardiola's own words told the story. Ahead of the Champions League trip to Villarreal, he described Cherki as one of the biggest talents I have ever seen, technically and individually. That is not praise Pep hands out casually, but notice what followed. No promise of starts, no inflated expectations, just trust delivered quietly. And then the rhythm broke. At the end of August, Cherki suffered a thigh injury. Guardiola initially said he would be out for around 2 months. City, as they always do, kept winning. The table stayed healthy. The results column looked fine, but the texture changed. Without Cherki, City's attacks became cleaner but more predictable. The ball moved quickly, sometimes too quickly. The game sped up when it should have slowed. Between the lines, the pauses disappeared. Opponents reset more easily because City no longer had that extra half second of uncertainty. This is the part that rarely shows up on highlight reels. Some players change games by being involved, others change them by being unavailable. Cherki returned earlier than expected, coming off the bench in a 2-0 win over Everton Everton. By then, competition was fierce. Phil Foden was flying. Jeremy Doku was electric. There were no open doors waiting for him, and yet nothing about Guardiola's tone changed. No panic, no rushing, no pressure, because City were never asking Cherki to replace anyone. They were teaching him how to influence games without forcing them. Rayan Cherki's City career didn't begin with a 90-minute statement. It began the Guardiola way, with small doses that reveal big information. Pep didn't throw him in. He introduced him like a rare ingredient, a little here, a little there, always in a role with a purpose. Sometimes he appears wide, but not as a touchline winger. Sometimes he floats inside like an extra midfielder. The point is consistent. Cherki is being trained to influence how City behave, not just how often he shoots. That is why his early Premier League numbers look quietly ridiculous when you slow them down. In 488 league minutes, he has 6 assists. That is 1 assist roughly every 81 minutes, as a player who has not even become a week-to-week starter yet. The expected assists number, XA 2.55, sits lower than the actual assists, which tells you something important about his profile. He is not spamming low-value final balls for a compilation. He is releasing teammates at moments when defenses are already compromised. This is the connector effect. Cherki does not dominate possession. He improves the quality of the next action. You see it in the passing line too. 340 passes at 86% completion in those league minutes, which is exactly what you want from a player living between lines and under pressure. He keeps City's circulation clean, but he also gives it direction, and he does it in a way that changes the behavior of defenders. He dribbles a lot, and the success rate is not pristine. 28 attempted dribbles at 43% completion, but that is not a flaw in this context. It is a tactical tool. Even failed dribbles matter when the attempt forces a second defender to step out, when it pins a fullback, when it creates hesitation. The Premier League often judges dribbling like an exam score. City judge it like leverage. Did it bend the block? Yes or no? Now this is where Guardiola's controlled freedom becomes the real story. Cherki is allowed to drift but never disconnect. He can leave the wing and appear in the half space, but he must still protect the structure. He can take risks, but they must be the correct risks. That is why his defensive output looks modest on paper. 7 tackles, 2 interceptions, but his value is often in pressing angles and counter-press positioning, where City win the ball back before the opponent even realizes they are allowed to breathe. And if you want proof that Pep sees this as more than talent, listen to the way he speaks about him. Before Villarreal, Guardiola called Cherki one of the huge talents I have ever seen, technically and individually. That is not casual praise. Pep is famously allergic to exaggeration unless he is making a point. Then come the confirmation moments, the ones that turn interesting into trusted. In the Champions League against Borussia Dortmund on the 5th of November 2025, City win 4-1, and Cherki comes off the bench to score late. Not a pretty cameo for the cameras, but an end product action in a major European game state when the tempo is high and decisions are faster. That matters because creative players do not get judged on ability at 0-0 in September. They get judged on clarity when games are loud. In the EFL Cup away at Swansea on 29th of October 2025, he produces directly again in a 3-1 win with ESPN's match feed, recording him scoring from inside the box. Cup ties are where Guardiola tests whether a player can carry responsibility in a different rhythm, against a different kind of opponent, in a stadium where the game will not politely follow City's script. Cherki looked like a player who could. And then, December 17th, 2025, the Brentford quarterfinal, City win 2-0, and Cherki scores a stunner from outside the box.
Valdemarson. A strike that is!
Reuters describes it as a powerful strike, with City rotating heavily and still controlling the match. This is another Guardiola signal. Rotation around you, chaos around you, weather around you, still deliver. City go through to a semi-final against Newcastle. Now, here's the intelligent parallel with Kevin De Bruyne, because this is where the comparison becomes meaningful without turning into a debate. De Bruyne's greatest City value was never assists. It was authority. His Premier League output is historic. 288 appearances, 72 goals, 119 assists. But the more revealing detail is what those numbers represented. City played faster, sharper, and more inevitable when he played because he controlled tempo and choice. He won the Premier League Playmaker Award in its inaugural year, 2017/18, with 16 assists, and again in 2019/20 with 20 assists. Those are not just totals, they are seasons where City's attacking rhythm was being conducted through one brain brain that could see the next action before the defense could reset. And 2019/20 gives you the most De Bruyne-coded stat of all, 104 chances created from open play in the league, widely cited as the highest in Europe's top 5 leagues since those records have been tracked consistently. That is not just creation, it is relentless manipulation of defensive blocks. Guardiola's quotes from that era are basically a scouting report on what he values in a creative leader. About De Bruyne, Pep said he can do absolutely everything, praising both his work off the ball and his positional intelligence with it. Now look at Cherki through that same lens, and the similarity is not in style, it is in function. De Bruyne accelerated City with range and force, early deliveries, diagonal switches, passes that arrived like punches. Cherki accelerates City with manipulation, disguised receiving angles, half turns between lines, short passes that arrive earlier than defenders expect. Both players change the rhythm of the team, both make teammates look like they have more time, both turn sterile possession into possession that feels like a threat. The difference is important, and it protects the story from hype. De Bruyne arrived as a finished engine. Cherki has arrived as a lever that City are teaching to become an engine. He is not asked to carry legacy, he is being taught responsibility, how to drift without disconnecting, how to create without chaos, how to choose the right moment rather than chasing the loud moment, and that is the Premier League's blind spot right now. People see the assists and assume form. City see the behavior and recognize a future conductor learning the rules of the orchestra, because at Manchester City, creative authority is not volume, it is timing. The comparison between Kevin De Bruyne and Rayan Cherki only becomes repetitive when it is framed as output. It becomes interesting when it is framed as responsibility. At Manchester City, the creative leader is not defined by how often he assists. He is defined by how often the team behaves differently when he is present. De Bruyne shaped City through assertiveness. He dictated matches by forcing decisions early, hitting spaces before defenders were ready, stretching blocks until structure broke. When he took control, games accelerated on his terms. Opponents were dragged into a tempo they didn't choose. Cherki's influence works in the opposite direction. He slows the moment before it needs to speed up. He receives closer to pressure, invites defenders in, and makes them commit before releasing the ball. Where De Bruyne opens space with range, Cherki opens it with proximity. The destination is the same, disorganized defenses and earlier runs, but the route is quieter. That distinction is why Guardiola never treats them interchangeably. De Bruyne was given authority because he already understood consequence. Cherki is being taught consequence before authority. This is why his role has been so carefully managed. He is not asked to dominate phases of play yet. He is asked to connect them. He is trusted to drift, but not to detach. He is encouraged to take risks, but only the risks that preserve City's structure once possession is lost. That is not restriction. That is education. At 22, Cherki is still learning when not to decide games, which at City is just as important as knowing how to decide them. Guardiola has always been deliberate with creative leaders. He exposes them to responsibility in layers, not all at once. First comes influence, then reliability. Only later comes control. You saw this pattern with De Bruyne. You see it now with Cherki. The difference is timing. De Bruyne arrived ready to command. Cherki has arrived ready to learn how command is earned. This is why City are protecting him from premature leadership. They are not asking him to be the emotional reference point. They are not asking him to carry moments when structure collapses. They are asking him to understand the system so deeply that one day he can bend it without breaking it, and that is the crucial reframing. Cherki is not the next De Bruyne. He is the next player being prepared to handle creative responsibility at Manchester City. At this club, crowns are never inherited. They are assembled piece by piece inside the game itself, and Cherki is still building. The Premier League is very good at spotting noise. Goals from distance, assists that loop the clip, moments that fit neatly into 30 seconds. However, Cherki's value is in what happens around him. When he plays, City's attacks breathe. Midfielders receive with better body shape. Runners commit sooner because they trust the ball will arrive on time. Wide players hesitate less because the spacing feels cleaner. The game looks simpler, not because it is, but because someone is organizing it quietly. And that matters most in big games. At the highest level, matches are not decided by how much you have the ball, but by how well you use the moments when both teams are set. This is where Cherki's profile becomes valuable. He doesn't rush those moments. He doesn't force them. He waits until the block leans, and then he moves it just just enough. That is the part the league keeps missing. While the conversation stays fixed on output and replacement, Manchester City are doing something far more deliberate. They are shaping their next creative axis, not around volume, but around control. Not around spectacle, but around reliability under pressure. Rayan Cherki is not replacing Kevin De Bruyne. He is learning how to control a football match in the way only City's most trusted players ever do. And by the time the numbers catch up, the responsibility will already be his.